So, all of this stuff. And so I looked at all this stuff, and then I'm thinking, well, okay, let me start from a neutral perspective. And this is what I did in the book, okay, in the Libertarian Charter. I put into the book the well, what my thoughts were. I thought, okay, let me start clean with a fresh slate. Okay, forget about all of this organization that we have right now, and how can we do this and have an honest system? Well, one of the first things that I thought about is, if you don't have an honest legal system that honestly enforces the law, much like the Magna Carta started off with the premise that the king is as subject to the law as every private individual in society. In other words, all of the politicians, all of the government become subject to law. The problem is there's a conflict of interest. Law is enforced by legislators. So my premise of this was separate the legislation from the law enforcement, create a separate Senate. We could call it a Senate, or we could call it whatever the heck you want. I mean, I'm a project manager, so I try to keep it kind of broad,
I see.
right? So that any country could adopt this kind of thing. So you have this organization, which is, I called it a Senate, but I mean, don't confuse it with the current Senate or the current system. But what they would be is totally independent, and they would have to be in another city, hopefully on the other side of the country, and they're not allowed to be in touch with each other. And basically, all the Senate does is enforce the law. The legislature makes the law, but the Senate enforces the law. So you have a what they call a Mexican standoff, right? You're both holding a loaded gun at each other, but you have the legislature and the judiciary on opposite sides of the fence, right? So you can make laws, but when you make a law, it's going to apply on you as well. Okay? So you're not going to be able to do any more fancy business. You're not going to be able to do executive launched wars. You're going to have to go through the constitutional process and go through the legislature in order to enact any act of war, right? Other than wherever there are constitutional changes. So it's constitutionalism. It's libertarianism that is constitutionally based. Because if we don't get the law out of the hands of the legislators, we're not going to ever have this system straightened out. Because to get the legislators, you have a political side of it that is catering to people. And then you have laws, which the biggest deficiency I found with laws, even in my personal issues over the years in business, is that nobody's enforcing them.
Yeah.
Nobody's enforcing the law. The legislature, I mean, the politicians just basically, walk away from it. I mean, look at this whole thing with Comey and the U.S. election and so forth. Here's this head guy with the FBI reporting all of these things, but nothing's being done. But the problem is, then those same politicians are paying his salary. So if he doesn't toe the line, he knows he's going to be out of a job.
Yep.
So you have a complete conflict of interest between judges, lawyers, the whole legal system. It's completely conflicted because it's connected to the political side of things. You have to separate, separation of church and state. I'd rather have separation of politics, of the political side, and the judicial side. Complete separation of judiciary and legislature. You guys make the laws, but whatever law you make, it's going to apply on you as well and everybody else in society. So you know what? Any politician making a law is going to really think twice. They're going to think, holy shit, they're going to apply on me too. That Senate, they're completely independent, and they're going to prosecute me. And you give the Senate the power to do investigations, and you give them the power to pursue things, to prosecute offenders. So now there's no connection between the two. Once you sever that relationship, now you're going to have a society that's going to have to be pretty straight.
That's interesting. So how do you find the people for the independent kind of branch that execute all the things? Where do you find them? Are they like working professionals?
They could be any citizen, but we set up a rule. Okay, they have to be 65 years of age or older.
Ooh.
And they only serve for 5 years in one term. That's it. The reason being, if you're young and hungry and you have children and a family to feed, of course you're corruptible. The most corruptible people are the youngest people because they're the most ambitious, and they're willing to, a lot of times, they haven't even given thought to what they're doing. I mean, look at all these poor kids that get involved in wars. I mean, why do you think governments could, what do you call it? They recruit young people. I mean, at my age, if I go to the military, they're going to tell me, get lost, you're too old. Probably at your age too, right? I mean, you got to be like, they want to have ideally someone in their early, late teens, early 20s, okay, whose prefrontal lobe in their brain is not fully developed. Okay, and the prefrontal lobe is the one that gives you, and they've discovered this. Scientists have discovered this. Up until the age of 25, your brain is not fully developed. Your brain is still developing. You're still growing. I mean, you're physically, your body is growing, but your brain is not. So, I mean, that's why the best athletes are the youngest ones. I mean, you do the most daring feats, right? I mean, you could do mountain bike, you could do karate, you could do whatever. And I'm sure you may even find the same with yourself. When you're younger, you were more daring. Now, as you're getting older, you start to think, whoa, 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 man, I could break a leg. Oh, I could do this. Oh, that could happen.
Yeah, and normally you've probably hurt yourself a few times, so you remember the pain. So you learn from that experience too.
That too. It's the pain. And so what happens? You start hindering yourself in your performance because you're now afraid because you've had that bad experience, right? And that's part of the learning process. But it's also the prefrontal lobe in the brain. It's the last part of your brain to develop.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's why they use all the young kids for military purposes. You get this kid whose brain is not fully developed, you send him out to war, and he's not really thinking about it. And then he comes back 5 or 10 years later, and now his prefrontal lobe is developed, and he starts thinking about, oh man, I feel bad about that. Oh man, like I did that, and I killed that child, but he could have been a bomber. It could have been, like all this stuff starts running, and God knows whatever else. I mean, all the horrors of war, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this stuff is now running in the guy's mind, and now he's got PTSD, right? Because he can't deal with it. It's like, holy shit, It's like this whole thing about I remember you doing a video where you're saying about, good and bad. You were balancing out, if you follow the religion and you do the good thing and you do the bad thing, it's the same kind of thing. Well, imagine if you reach a point in your life where you finally start thinking like you're thinking now about good and bad and what's the options, but now you've done all these bad things. That's a heavy burden, man.
That is. And in psychology, there's a concept called cognitive dissonance, right? Yes. So if you're trying to be a good person, but you remember in the past you've done a lot of bad things, it's more easy for you to go back to doing the bad things because that keeps your psyche in check. It's like, well, at least I'm not being a hypocrite. It's like in Rwanda or any of those mass genocide situations, why do people just start killing? They killed one person maybe because it was in everyone's energy, right? They're like, fuck, I killed one person. Oh, fuck, what do I do? You keep killing that.
You get a kind of a mass psychosis going.
Yeah.
Yeah. But one of the things that I found, and it's also something I cover in the book, there's a professor called Professor Robert Hare. He's with the University of British Columbia, my alma mater. Mm-hmm. And Professor Hare did some studies on prisoners who were psychopaths. Mm-hmm. He's one of the world's leader, and he developed the Hare psychopathy test, which is used worldwide now for determining if somebody is a psychopath. Mm-hmm. Okay? But Professor Hare has gone beyond that because he started out with criminals in the prisons, and then he started to do these studies on business people and professionals and lawyers and so forth. And he found the highest numbers of psychopaths are in the legal profession and
horrible.
Political profession. Yeah. I mean, is it normal, like we were talking before, for a person to be gloating about a war, about bombing and killing people? We conquered. This sounds like some Roman victor in a movie or something.
Yeah.
Like she's playing out some movie scene. This is not something of somebody that of a level of consciousness that I want running my government or running anything, politically, where you're going to put people's life on the line. But so there's a situation of psychopathy, and the psychologist may look at it. Maybe some. I'm not saying this person is always a psychopath, but certainly demonstrating psychopathic behaviors. And it's basically, and it's interesting because Professor Hare, I read his book, called Snakes in Suits is one of his books. Okay. And he talks about this, about in business, about people with no consciousness. And it's one of the things for me, because I've had business situations where people had basically no integrity whatsoever, or had to deal with these individuals. And one of the questions I often asked myself, because I was raised a Christian, why? Like, why would you do this? Why would you screw me over in a business deal? Like, we could do more business in the future. That was my thing. We could do more business in the future. I was your friend. I was working with you. I thought we had a good thing going. And then the guy pulls a stunt, right? So it's like, I had a problem with that in my mind. I was really like locked in my brain. Like, why? I don't get it. Because it's not even good business. And then I started to find out about psychopaths, and I read a few of Hare's books, and hey, okay. Because I mean, Hare actually tried to reform these people in the prison. He started to put on programs, okay, to reform psychopaths. And he found out, and he did, and then when he found out when he started doing MRIs on them, that there's a parts of their brain that are not developed.
Exactly.
That they, yeah, uh, and so basically, it's a precondition. And he found out that when he was doing therapy with them, like group sessions and that, they start to mimic each other. Like they start to see, oh, this is how you do sympathy. This is how you do sadness. And they would start like pretending they're crying and they're upset.
Yeah.
And they would like role play. They'd start acting. And they figured if they could act like this, they could get out of jail, right?
Yeah.
By pretending that they now had a conscience, which they don't. And so you scan these guys and you find they don't have a conscience. And what's interesting, and this is where the revolution in psychology is coming in. Okay, this is going to be the big one in the next few centuries, maybe sooner. You can scan their brain. You don't have to ask the guy questions. You don't have to do a test. Scan his brain, you'll see if he's a psychopath.
Yeah.
That's
and the other thing is, I remember reading this a long time ago, but the way to reform psychopaths, quote unquote, and you know, this still needs a lot of tests, is probably something related to changing the hormones in their brains. Like, I think there was a study, if you spray people with oxytocin, which is like the chemical for like a mother and a baby, or like a really good friendship, or a couple that stay together for the rest of their life, it's like that kind of pair bonding / really deep spiritual love type of hormone. When you spray it into people's noses, so it breaks the blood-brain barrier and it goes into your brain, the dose of oxytocin helps you distinguish faces for people that you normally can't distinguish faces. Like, you know, I can't really distinguish, let's say, Arab faces or African faces as well as I can distinguish white faces or Asian faces, because those are the faces I've been around for my life. You know, so you ask a white guy, he's not going to be able to tell Asian people apart. But if you give them oxytocin sprays in their nose and then have them like be able to tell people apart, apparently they can tell people apart a little better. I don't know. So there's like, there could be ways of helping psychopaths, you know, not to say they're not coping well in society. There could be an argument to say they actually cope the best in society, but there is a way potentially to help them normalize in society using chemical means that build up the brain's natural abilities to develop empathy. So that's just an idea. I don't know how much they'll test that, but that's just something I thought about.
Well, it's not a bad idea, and it would be nice if there was some way that we could resolve this issue. And I'm sure there are clinicians who may at some point in the future work on it, because if you're going to bring in a program like that, it's going to be quite discriminatory, where you're going to have to, you know, where you test people, for example, if they're applying for a job as a judge, for example, and now we're going to say, well, you know what, we're going to MRI you. And the guy knows.
Yeah, that's Gattaca, the movie Gattaca all over again.
Well, it is, but it isn't, because look at the condition of the world we're in today.
Yeah.
I mean, I see people with a big heart, and some people with too much heart that they carry it on their sleeve. And then I see people with no heart at all who are as cold can get. I see people who are con artists, manipulators, and you see a lot of these guys. And I mean, Hare says in his book that they reach for the highest echelons of society, and they often attain it because they're cutthroat. They'll pretend to be your friend. They're charming. They're absolutely charming, and they know how to play people. And they'll play you, and they'll get to their position, and then they'll step on you and squish you like a grape.
Yeah.
You know. So I mean, these are not the kind of people you want running society, but they're everywhere. I firmly believe the legal system's full of them, and so does Hare. Hare tends to say
What's
that
this
as well.
book again? Let me just write this down so I can link it later when the video gets published.
It's Professor Robert Hare, and his last name is spelled Hare. And the name of the book is Snakes in Suits.
Oh, okay. Someone told me about this book.
Oh yeah, this is an eye opener. I mean, this is where you start to, you know, you're probably things in society that you look at and you say, why is it like that? Like, why are these people so callous or cruel or mean? And it doesn't seem to faze them. And it really opens your eyes that, you know what? It's one of the things I talk about in my book in terms of like races and cultures and multiculturalism and all this, because I get into that stuff as well, is that we have to start looking at people as individuals. We have to get realistic. You know, China may constitute half of the world's population, but I'm sure you're the only guy, you know, Jerry, like yourself. You know what I mean? Yeah. You have your perspective, and you're unique as a person. And the same with me, and the same with every one of your listeners and viewers, right? Yeah. We're all unique as individuals, and no two women are the same, and no two men. That's why I wonder about some of these things like this MGTOW and such of this. I know that you're quite interested in this, and it's like, okay, well, you're stigmatizing women the same as the feminists are stigmatizing men, and I can understand a lot of these men have been burnt and they're upset, and they have legitimate concerns, and they have legitimate concerns regarding the legal system, concerning how men are treated, which is horrendous. It's actually it's a full human rights violation. I
Mhm.
mean, it's complete discrimination. And we could talk about women's rights and how women have moved, but in my life, I've never, and I'm over a half century old. I've never seen a man actually object to women having equal rights. And I think a lot of things with regards to women's rights was just men, it was acquiescence. Men just basically said, yeah, okay, that sounds reasonable. Sure, women should be able to work, and yeah, why not? If my wife wants to work, sure. I mean, if it's a normal, decent kind of guy, which most guys are, and I tend to view things on the perspective of trying to be positive about things,
Mhm.
and I've never, I mean, if people are doing abusive things in their relationship, it's not something I'm seeing, and it's not something I've seen in my family.
Mhm.
And I've seen people get things wrong, and I've seen people have bad tempers and whatever. But it's just like any relationship with people. If you're with them long enough and you have a more intense relationship, sure, you're gonna have disagreements. That's just the ups and downs of life.